hold on. How's everyone doing? My hair is not doing it today. I mean, look at this mess. So we are gonna, it is a hat day. It is a hat day. So how's everyone doing? Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. Let me touch up my face a little bit. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about unpatriotic coverage. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? Anyway, so I appreciate every single one of you. We're waiting for people to jump in here. Though, in a brief intermission from me talking about constant drama happening in Iran, I should say drama as in the war, I'm specifically going to pivot and talk a little bit more today about broadcasting. I'm going to be talking about news coverage. I'm going to be talking about criticism, the First Amendment, and also what the past and the law currently says around broadcasting. Oh, Ellie, hello! Happy St. Patrick's Day! So, we're going to talk a lot about unpatriotic coverage. Now, you're like, what is unpatriotic coverage? Oh, you know, that's just coverage that our current president doesn't like. Oh, any criticism towards Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth or any coverage that this current White House doesn't like, they claim is unpatriotic coverage. So that's interesting. It's some North Korea type crap there. Good morning, little bro. Hello. Hello. How's it going? Happy St. Patrick's Day. Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. So today we're going to talk all about this unpatriotic coverage. You probably, if you've clicked on this video or this live stream after it's ended, you're like, oh my God, you've said that so many times. I know, I repeat myself. It's one of my flaws. When I'm trying to do my live streams, it's one of my biggest flaws. So why don't I go ahead and get started here? All right, here we go. Oh God, it's the worst when you start out with the bad tongue pop. Hold on. Here we go. Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. So today we're going to be talking about unpatriotic coverage. Now you're like, what is that? Oh, you know, like any coverage of the news or recent events that Trump or his team of cronies don't like, they claim is unpatriotic. Any criticism towards this current White House in regards to their actions around the Iran war, all of a sudden you're an unpatriotic American if you question the motives or the actions of our existing dictator. I mean president. I mean, same thing. But regardless, let's get into it. So we're going to talk today about the FCC. I'm actually going to launch a poll in here. Do you know what the FCC is or stands for? Yes, no, heard of it. All right, there we go. Those are the options. Done. If you're watching this back as a video, I apologize. You're not going to be able to see this poll, and I've probably edited this out, this little section anyway. So today we're going to be talking about unpatriotic coverage and the FCC. Now, I launched a poll here, and if you do not know what the FCC is, don't be afraid to say that you don't know or you haven't heard of. You've heard of it, but you don't really know too much. Don't worry, I don't read your responses out. Today we're going to be talking about the FCC. So make sure to vote here. Do you all know what the FCC is. It's okay if you don't. On my live streams, we do not judge if you are knowledgeable about the topic. That's part of the reason why I go live, is to inform, educate, but then also provide some information for you to make decisions. Oh, good morning. I appreciate every single one of you. Hello. Akicha, hello. Ilisa, hello. Ginger Monster, hello. They keep lying. You know, lying is not the same. Lying, you mean Trump keeps lying? Because he contradicts himself quite a lot. So it looks like, I think, a few of you don't know what the FCC is. That's okay. It doesn't look like anyone clicked the last option, so that's funny. Please make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. But most everyone knows what the FCC is. All right. So I'm going to end the poll here. There we go. So today we're going to be talking about unpatriotic coverage and the FCC. Now you're like, what does the FCC stand for? FCC stands for Federal Communications Commission. The FCC basically oversees public broadcasting and the licenses for public broadcasting. They uphold the standard that public broadcasters are operating in the public's best interest. Now you're like, okay, well, how do you define the public's best interest? That gets to the heart of today's live stream. Also, public broadcasting, all public broadcasts have the right to the First Amendment. So the right to freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expression. So it makes it difficult for the FCC to then regulate public broadcasting. Okay, they must operate in the public interest, but what is the public interest? So it makes it difficult to understand who defines the public interest. So let's peel back this onion, shall we? Trump backs FCC chair's threat to pull licenses of news outlets over Iran war coverage. U.S. President on social media was thrilled that FCC Chairman Brendan Carr reportedly looking into broadcasters' licenses. How does this relate to unpatriotic coverage? Well, stay tuned to find out. Donald Trump reinforced comments made by Brendan Carr, the chairman, whatever, of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, threatening the broadcast licenses of news organizations that report unfavorably on the war in Iran. So Trump is basically backing up the person he appointed into the FCC role, and that person is cheerleading, saying, any coverage of this war that we don't like, we're going to possibly try and take away their media licenses. That's some North Korea type shit right there. Just saying. In a Truth Social post on Sunday night, Trump said he was thrilled that Brendan Carr, FCC chairman, was looking at the licenses of some of these corrupt and highly unpatriotic news organizations. They get billions of dollars of free American airwaves, and they use it to perpetuate lies. So let me get this straight, even though I'm gay. Any coverage that Trump doesn't like of this existing Iran war conflict, whatever he wants to call it today, is unpatriotic. And he's using his lapdog, Brendan Carr from the FCC, to basically bully news organizations into not sharing information around it unless that information is favorable for Trump, or what Trump considers to be favorable coverage. Yeah, that's totally normal for American society. Absolutely. Quite normal. Brendan Carr wrote in a post on X Saturday that broadcasters, quote, that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in the public interest, and they will lose their licenses if they do not. Now, credit where credit is due. He is correct that broadcasters must operate in the public interest, and they are at threat for losing their licenses if they don't. But how do you define the public's interest? Is the public's interest based on what the executive branch thinks the public's interest is? Is public interest defined by what Donald Trump or Brennan Carr thinks is the public's best interest? Whose definition of public interest matters? That is a question. That is the question. This is what Brennan Carr wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. Make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. First Amendment, bye-bye. Yeah, I know, right? Unfortunately. Molotov Juice Box. Oh my god, that's such a username. Oh my god. So this is what Brennan Carr wrote on X. Broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in the public's best interest, and they will lose their licenses if they do not. Okay, so he's claiming that the news is running hoaxes and news distortions. Okay, news distortions according to whom? By whose definition? By whose opinion? He said, and frankly, changing course in their own business is in their own business interest, since trust in legacy media has now fallen to an all-time low of just 9%, and their ratings are disasters. Well, he's not wrong. Trust in legacy news media outlets has been fading over time. That is correct if you actually look at public's trust. Now, that doesn't then mean that public broadcasters are currently airing things that are incorrect or news distortions, according to him. You might not trust a source, but that doesn't mean that they're really reporting something that's wrong. You see what I mean? So the American people have subsidized broadcasters to the tunes of billions of dollars for providing free access to the nation's airwaves. True. It is very important to bring trust back into the media, which has earned itself the label of fake news. No, media did not earn the label itself of fake news. That was a term that has been popularized by our current crybaby president-in-chief, Donald Trump. Don't try to claim that fake news, that they decided to put that label on themselves. No, it was thrust upon them like an SA abuser. Like Trump. But just continuing on. And then this is an interesting part of this. When a political candidate is able to win a landslide election after, in the face of hoaxes and distortions, there is something very wrong. It means the public has lost faith and confidence in the media. And we can't allow that to happen. Time for change. Is he claiming that Trump won a landslide election victory? I don't know if I would consider it a landslide election victory. Nevertheless, he goes on to basically say that any coverage that is what he considers fake news ought to be investigated, and broadcasters deserve to be challenged on their license renewals. But by whose definition? They have to operate in the public's best interest, but who determines what the public's best interest is? You or me? No. According to Brennan Carr, it is the government that determines what the public's best interest is. Which is kind of a scary thing to think about. This is what Donald Trump ended up saying, backing up his henchman, Brennan Carr. This is what he said recently on his Truth Social. Yet again,
An intentionally misleading headline by the fake news media about the 5 tanker planes that were supposedly struck down at an airport in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, what a gorgeous name. And of no further use. And actually, the base was hit a few days ago, but the planes were not struck or destroyed. 4 or 5 had virtually no damage and are already back in service. 1 had slightly more damage, but it will be in the air shortly. None were destroyed or close to that, as the fake news said in headlines.
Okay, wait, hold on a minute. From my understanding, you're criticizing the news media for talking about strikes on these tanker planes, which it sounds like happened, and you didn't like the fact that they reported that there were strikes on these tanker planes, claimed that it was a hoax, but then admitted to them having damage, but then also being back up in the air very shortly. So what it sounds like is you don't like the idea that the news media reported on an objective happening. Imagine Trump getting so angry that the news is just objectively reporting what is happening. He's like, you're not seeing it from my perspective. Sorry, bucko, but your perspective is not the only one that matters. I care more about the objective information. You're like, yeah, but they'll be up in the air shortly. But still, they were struck and they were damaged. Like, it really goes to show you how conceited this man is. How much in his own brain he really is. But continuing onward here, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal in particular, and other low-life papers and media actually want us to lose the war. The terrible reporting is the exact opposite of the actual facts. They are truly sick and demented people. They have no idea the damage they caused to the United States of America. Fortunately, as proven by our conclusive election win in 2024, the people of our country understand what is happening far better than the fake news media. Make sure to send some likes. I appreciate every single one of you. So what Trump is basically doing is backing up his henchman Brennan Carr, who is claiming that any coverage, news coverage, that doesn't paint what Trump would consider his preferred series of events or his interpretation of events as fake news media distortions. You see what Trump is trying to do there, right? He's trying to make his view, his opinion, his interpretation, his preferred sequence of events. He's trying to make that objective reality. Imagine if another president had done that. Imagine if Obama, or if Biden, or a hypothetical Kamala Harris, or hypothetical Bernie Sanders were to talk about how, the news coverage doesn't paint me in a great way, so I'm going to complain about it and say what you should be talking about is this. What you should be talking about is my interpretation, my analysis, my opinion, my preferred version of the set of facts that you should focus on. When we as Americans look at other leaders across the world, like Putin or North Korea, we criticize, rightfully so, those people for doing dictator-like stuff. But then it's on our own soil and we somehow are brainwashed. We're currently in the process, according to Trump, of being brainwashed in a sense, to then believe that that is what is strength. We criticize and call out this exact behavior of other countries, but then somehow we're supposed to endorse it when it's in our own? So any criticism that the news has of any current events all of a sudden becomes unpatriotic, and then the government is threatening their licenses because of that speech. It is bone chilling that this is where we are. Now, before you start to worry too much, from my broadcast here, you're going to notice that a lot of this is just hyperbolic language coming from FCC Chairman Brennan Carr. He doesn't really have a lot of levers to be able to pull to actually make this a reality, because there's a lot of barriers put in place. That being said, that kind of rhetoric is damaging and also needs to be taken seriously. So, in an interview with Reuters published on Monday, but reportedly conducted before the Post, Brennan Carr, FCC chairman, said he could accelerate reviews of licenses held by broadcast television stations. Quote, "You can do early renewals," Carr was quoted as saying. When asked, he also said it was possible to revoke broadcast licenses as a result of pending investigations. All of that stuff is on the table. He added that it would be a good thing in the long term to make sure people understand that there are, in fact, things you can do to lose your license, meaning media licenses, broadcasting licenses, and really help broadcasters reorient the operations to the public interest. So what Brennan Carr is trying to slyly do here is claim that a lot of broadcasters are not operating within the public interest because he doesn't like what these public broadcasters are saying, or thereby using their platform to criticize Donald Trump on this war. How many people we got in here? 47? Y'all are awesome. Y'all are awesome. I raised my arm like that so I can actually see the number up there. Sometimes it's hard to see. So if you're watching this back as a video, I've probably clipped this out, but still. Trump described Iran as a master of media manipulation, noting correctly that AI-generated images have flooded the internet, which news organizations are cautiously navigating. But then he claimed that Iran is, quote, working in close communication with the fake news media in disseminating these images, describing one in which a U.S. aircraft carrier is shown falsely burning at sea. So Trump is getting angry at unpatriotic news coverage, which criticizes him for certain actions he's done. But then, rightfully so, he's kind of mad at AI-generated images, which, to be fair, Donald Trump puts out AI-generated images all the time if it makes himself look good. So you're criticizing exactly what you do sometimes, bucko. Regardless, this is according to our FCC chairman, Brennan Carr. Broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their licenses come up. Now, this language itself, when you are looking at it, you're like, all right, they have to operate in the public's best interest. Well, who determines what the public's best interest is? Is it Brennan Carr? Is it the Trump administration? They certainly want that to be the case. Now, I actually want to dive a little bit deeper on this. I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. Let me make sure my music is not too loud. All right. Now, when talking about public broadcasting, the public's responsibility, or the responsibility of these broadcasters to the public interest, as well as freedom of speech, there's a lot to break down here. Broadcasters in the United States are legally required to operate in the public interest, convenience, or necessity as a condition of holding federal licenses to use the airwaves. This obligation, stemming from the Communications Act of 1934, stems from the concept that the radio spectrum is a limited public resource rather than private property, which makes a lot of sense. Which puts into perspective all of what Brennan Carr is trying to claim. The federal government has regulated broadcasters for more than 90 years. Broadcast spectrum license holders, the television and radio stations that broadcast over-the-air programming to local communities, have their licenses granted by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and are subject to public interest obligation as established by Section 309 of the Communications Act of 1934. You're like, okay, I get it. There's this interest, these broadcasters operate within the public interest. This is what the specific code is. Nothing in this chapter shall be understood or construed to give the Federal Communications Commission the power of censorship over radio communications or signals transmitted by any radio station. And no regulation or condition shall be promulgated or fixed by the Commission, which shall interfere with the right of free speech by means of radio communication. So what this is basically saying is, all right, the FCC has a responsibility to make sure broadcasters are operating within the public's best interest, but the public's best interest is broadly defined, and it's not only up to the FCC to determine solely on its own what the public's best interest necessarily is, though it is up to them to determine, but not solely on its own. And you can't restrict the freedom of speech of these broadcasters in the pursuit. And you're like, okay, that's a lot. Basically, it just means that Brennan Carr is barking. We'll see if he ends up getting anywhere with trying to restrict the freedom of speech of these broadcasters. That's why you saw threats to take down different people like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert. So can the FCC strip broadcasters of their licenses over unpatriotic, I say in air quotes, war coverage? Well, there are some tools that they have at their disposal. There are also tools that media has at their disposal, because they can then claim that it's that it goes against the First Amendment and the rights for free speech, and also that they are operating within the public's best interest. So, on Friday, March 13th of 2026, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing U.S. officials, that 5 Air Force refueling aircraft were struck and damaged during an Iranian missile strike on the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. President Trump took to Truth Social to call the report fake news, claiming the planes were all in service with the exception of one, which will soon be flying in the skies. So Trump is mad that the news reported on something that objectively happened, and he admits happened. He admits was damaged and then will soon be up in the skies. What it sounds like is Trump just doesn't like the news reporting information that he views it as negative towards him. Yeah, and when you think that he's somehow some super, super tough guy, he gets so... look at my hair just peeking out of this hat here. He gets so touchy over anything he considers bad press. And he then accused media outlets of misleading coverage and said they should be brought up on charges for treason, and said he is thrilled that Brennan Carr is looking into the licenses of highly unpatriotic news organizations. What is your reaction to all of this? If you could dispel in 1 or 2 words, what is your reaction to this? Put it in the chat below or the comments if you're watching this back as a video. The fact that Trump acknowledges that there was a strike on this Air Force base that damaged some of our planes, and then he got mad because the news talked about it, and he admits that, okay, All of them are in service except for one, which will soon be flying the skies. Well, it sounds like it was damaged and it is being repaired. He's claiming that the news was being misleading and they should be held for treason, when the news just objectively reported the information. Wow, there's not any single person that commented a single word. Oh, goodbye First Amendment, at least for a time. Yeah, I think we can fight back though. What is one word or a couple words of your reaction to this? Am I just talking to a whole bunch of, am I just talking to myself? Who knows? Are you all following me? I hope I'm not making this confusing. Sometimes I get in my own head when I'm doing these broadcasts, so I hope that I'm not making this difficult to understand. So what are one or two words of your reaction to this? To the fact that Trump is basically claiming that, oh, these organizations are they should be held for treason because they just report the objective information. Someone just wrote BULLSHIT. Love that. Hello, how's it going? So what's interesting is I want to get to some people's comments and reactions to Brendan Carr's post here. So, of course, he said broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. Correct course in what way? So that it goes the way that you serve your deity, daddy, Donald Trump, in a way that covers him favorably. You're basically saying, oh, we might cancel your news licenses unless you pivot course and start reporting things that are favorable to us. Sounds like some dictator type stuff right there. Idiocracy? Yeah, very fair. Is this a lefty channel? I'm not here to tell you whether it is or not. I report the news. I have my opinions, but it's Truth Channel. Yeah, I'm just trying to report the objective information. I love when people come in here, and this is just a side note. I love when people come in here and they're like, "Are you a leftist? Are you right wing? Like, why don't you just listen? Stop trying to gauge whether I am friend or foe or anything like that. Stop participating in this whole idea of friend or foe. Send some likes if you agree, because I'm so tired of this idea, are you on my side or not? We are Americans. We are just trying to figure out the objective reality, truth, and information. That's why I do what I do. I'm so tired of this dichotomy of, are you on my team or are you my enemy? We don't need to play this petty little game. It's exhausting. We don't need that. The idea here is that this is just the raw information. That hat goes hard. Oh, thank you. I'm assuming that's a compliment. So this is just the objective happenings. The objective facts are our FCC, Federal Communications Commission Chairman, Brendan Carr, is claiming that any information, any news coverage that is unflattering of the president is thereby, he's basically threatening news organizations of not acting in the public's best interest. Well, hold on. Who defines what the public's best interest is? Okay, so does Trump define what's in the public's best interest? It sounds like Brendan Carr kind of wants that to be the case. I don't think that should be our standard. So the person who regulates our news media is basically claiming that if you don't report news in the way that we want, then all of a sudden you are somehow not operating within the public's best interest. That's some North Korea type crap there. That is some Germany, 1930s Germany stuff right there. And let me get to some people's comments in regards to this post here. This is what people were commenting about. Someone took a screenshot of this Brennan Carr back in 2019. You can see, oh, that's on Valentine's Day. Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest. That is a sharp reversal from where you are today, Brendan Carr. So it sounds like you've completely changed your tune, which, sure, you can change your tune, but you were correct. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest. When you say roving mandate, I would agree. They do have general interest in making sure that broadcasters are operating within the public's interest, but they are not the sole people who regulate that definition alone. Just because news coverage is critiquing our current president in regards to his actions or war in Iran doesn't then mean that you have the right to try and dangle broadcasters' licenses and use it as a threat of being revoked if they don't relay coverage that Trump finds favorable. Censorship is the authoritarian's dream, he says. That was Brendan Carr. He said that a while back. 2023, free speech is the counterweight. It is the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. Where did this Brendan Carr go? He's correct there. Credit where it's due. So, all of a sudden now you become a part of the Trump presidency, you become a part of his cabinet, and you completely abandon all of those principles as soon as you have a shot at trying to steer all of News Corporation's preferred coverage. So, by the way, for those people who are like, well, who is this Brendan Carr fellow? He was an author and architect of Project 2025, just to let you know. Like, Brendan Carr was a head honcho on Project 2025. I know the font is small, but he's over here. I think he's like right there. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, on a list of names of people associated with drafting Project 2025. I know you haven't heard that for a while. And it's so funny because NBC said a bipartisan group of former FCC leaders petitions the agency to repeal the policy the Trump administration invoked in discussions surrounding Jimmy Kimmel at ABC and the investigation of 60 Minutes at CBS. And Brendan Carr says, how about no? On my watch, the FCC will continue to hold broadcasters accountable and their public interest obligations. You do, as the FCC, you do have a right to do that. But do you have the right to define what the public's interest is solely? No. He then goes, it is quite rich for the exact people that pressured prior FCC to censor conservatives through the news distortion policy to now object to the agency's even-handed application of the law. Well, there's a difference. You know, there was a difference. Like, Fox News literally aired objective, lies in regards to the 2020 election. That's different. That's different. And of course, some of these statements, this was him before he swallowed the MAGA pill, and Trump threatened him every single day because he was saying actual things like saying things like previously what did I just put up? Oh geez, I just lost track. Where was I? Free speech is the counterweight. It's the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. This is what he posted before he all of a sudden went MAGA. So if you're like, okay, Scott, what's the whole point here? What's your summary? What's the big conclusion? The big conclusion is that our FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, he's trying to then claim that any sort of information, any news, any coverage that doesn't paint Trump in the most favorable light is thereby objectively incorrect. And he's using that narrative to try and dangle the news licenses for different places, different broadcasters, as leverage to get them to pivot and change course to providing a more patriotic version of events. Similar to what they do in North Korea. What an absolute joke you are. You are no better than a partisan hack from Fox News, and almost as bad as North Korea state TV, forcing people to conform to whatever dear leader likes. Landslide? Dude, he didn't even get 50% of the popular vote. That's not a landslide. And of course, it's Trump basically redone as North Korean dictator over here, and North Korea sponsored state TV. The only hoaxes and distortions, aka lies, come from this egregious administration that have zero respect for the Constitution. Go suck a bag of, I'm not even gonna say that. And remember back in 1930s, it didn't start with gas chambers. It started with one party controlling the media. One party controlling the message. One party deciding what is truth. One party censoring speech and silencing opposition. One party dividing citizens into an us and them and calling on their supporters to harass them. It started when good people turned a blind eye and let it happen. Sound like any moment in history that we're maybe currently facing? It's damning for sure. Yeah, in that, are you then actually going to shut down Fox News because they literally platformed lies that they knew were incorrect? I think you're confusing public's interest with Trump's interests. And that's also the big case here. Brendan Carr is like, oh, well, the FCC has a public interest to regulate broadcasting licenses because these fake news organizations are running lies. Lies according to whom? Lies according to Trump? Because all of a sudden it's not coverage that you would consider favorable? Imagine if this was on the other foot. If this was a Democratic president. All of a sudden, any criticism, any justifiable criticism towards that person, towards that president, is then somehow considered lies. And they are then using that as the standard of truth for leverage to then argue about the public's interest. Trump does not set what the public's interest is. He doesn't set what the public's interest is. Period. End of story. It is for the public to determine what the public's interest is. That's some dictator crap right there. Trying to control the news with threats. I cannot English. Trying to control the news with threats. Let me guess. Fox, News Nation, or other right-leaning stations, they aren't on your hit list. Wonder why. This is also similar to Pete Hegseth. So Pete Hegseth complains the press is making Trump look bad by covering the deaths of U.S. service members during military operations in Iran. Quote, when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. The press only wants to make the president look bad. The press is objectively covering what's happening. Yes, sometimes they put their spin on it in op-eds or analysis. That's fair. But they're also just reporting what is happening. XYZ has happened. Just because you might not like the fact that XYZ has happened or XYZ is now being talked about doesn't mean that it is fake news or media distortion. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Tell that to the families of the soldiers. No, Trump makes Trump look bad. No help necessary. Reporting the truth is more important than worrying about whether it makes the president look good or look bad. Very true. Very true. And so Pete Hegseth complains the press is making Trump look bad by covering the deaths of U.S. service members during military operations in Iran. When tragic things happen, the press only wants to make the president look bad. Sorry, but it's the media's job to report the truth. The truth. How impolite and disrespectful of those troops to get killed and make Trump look bad. Court-martial them posthumously. LOL. The press is not there to make the president look good or look bad. They are there simply to report the news of the day. These photos of soldiers coming home in caskets was real during Vietnam. This is the human cost of war. It's ugly. Stop the tough guy BS. And it also gets to this. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also used his press conference on Trump's war in Iran to browbeat the press and weigh in on CNN's ownership. Quote, more fake news from CNN. The sooner that David Ellison takes over the network, the better. So for those people who do not know, a good chunk of our media is now currently being consolidated amongst right-leaning or right-wing billionaires. Right now, CNN is in the process of being acquired by the Ellisons, Larry and David Ellison. They own a lot of other news broadcasting networks and information. They, I think, own Skydance, Paramount, and now they're looking to acquire even more. Larry Ellison also owns Oracle. So, right now, Pete Hegseth is saying the sooner that our guy takes over that network, the better. You know, and it really gets to showing that the government right now is saying, unless you report the media, the news information, unless the media reports the news information the way we see it, then any other version, any other objective version is fake. So tell the media the way that we want to see it. Genuinely, that's what they're asking for. Any other versions of events are unpatriotic. Meaning that if you hold a slightly different opinion or a different viewpoint, or just report the objective happenings, all of a sudden, you are deemed an unpatriotic person, which is crazy. Trump team applying pressure to the media. Tell the war story the way that we see it. Through lectures, scoldings, and outright threats, President Donald Trump and his aides are ratcheting up the pressure on journalists to cover the war in the Middle East the way that the administration wants. The Republican president has fumed on social media about stories that he doesn't like and berated a reporter on Air Force One. The government's top media regulator, Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, has warned that broadcasters risk losing their licenses if they don't stay away from fake news. Trump and his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, have questioned the patriotism of news outlets because of their reporting. So if you just objectively report what has happened, then you are unpatriotic because of those actions, because of that factual information. If it doesn't make Trump look good, then you are fake news. You are falsifying the information and deserve to have your broadcast license revoked. Trump has complained about war coverage in both specific and general ways. In a social media post, he said news reports exaggerated the damage to planes that were attacked by Iran at an airport in Saudi Arabia. He attacked corrupt media outlets for falling for AI-generated false reports created by Iran and said the media hates to report how well the U.S. military has performed. Which is interesting because simultaneously Trump also admitted that these planes did sustain damage, but then that they were going to be up in the air shortly after. He just didn't like the fact that the news caught wind of it. He's so sensitive. All presidential administrations tangle with the press. It is a natural byproduct of journalists, watchdog roles, and a democratic society. But the incidents of the past few days speak to a hostility towards the very idea of being questioned, in a way that, some say, scratches up against the First Amendment itself. Which gets to this. Raging at media. Pete Hegseth just said the quiet part out loud. Pete Hegseth said he wants patriotic coverage of the Iran war. He doesn't understand. In a democracy, coverage that asks difficult questions of the government is itself patriotic. That's obviously a little bit opinionated there, but I also agree. Quote, I know that everything is written intentionally, Pete Hegseth said of the media, referring to his own previous stint at Fox News as a contributor, thus seemingly admiring that Fox at least does deliberately show coverage. He faulted numerous headlines, insisting that rather than report things like Mideast war intensifies, the press should instead be more patriotic and write headlines like Iran increasingly desperate. So let me lay this out for you. If you're like, wait, hold on, what just happened in one ear out the other? Our Secretary of War, Defense Secretary, whatever he wants to identify as today, is saying, your headlines don't make us look good. So we are going to demand that you write different headlines that we approve of. Instead of saying that the Mideast war is intensifying, you should instead do something that is more patriotic, like Iran increasingly desperate. So our government is basically saying the news should report certain things, their version of events. That is some North Korea type crap right there. If this happens in other countries, Americans call this out. Happens in our own country, one side of our political aisle, spectrum, whatever, in our citizenry, decides to then be completely ignorant of it based on convenience. It's so silly. Their focus is all, it just makes me look bad. Yeah, their focus is, oh my God, this makes me look bad. Sorry, I don't think the focus is trying to make you look bad. The focus is objective information getting out to people. 13 U.S. soldiers dead in Iran, and Pete Hegseth is complaining about the media. Not the war, not the deaths, the coverage. Let me read that again. 13 U.S. soldiers dead in Iran, and Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, our Secretary of Defense, is complaining about the media. Not the war, not the deaths, but the coverage, claiming it doesn't make the United States look good. Basically claiming that coverage that is critical of the president and his actions is somehow unpatriotic. This is what he said instead. This is basically what he said. Some in the press just can't stop. Allow to make a few suggestions. People look at the news and they see banners, headlines. I used to be in that business. I know everything is written intentionally. For example, a banner, Mideast war intensifies. What should the banner read instead? How about Iran increasingly desperate? Because they are. Or more fake news from CNN. The sooner that David Ellison takes over, the better. So Pete Hegseth just demanded a media company be taken over by a Trump ally and called it a solution to fake news. That's not media criticism. That's fascism with a talking point. He's saying the problem isn't that we lie, it's that you control the narrative instead of us. Replace CNN's leadership with someone loyal to Trump, and suddenly the truth will magically appear. This is the oldest move in the book. Accuse your enemy of the crime that you're committing. Make it sound reasonable. Fake news is real. But the answer isn't consolidating media power in the hands of the regime. It is decentralizing it. Hegseth knows this. He's a former Fox host. He knows exactly how this narrative works. That's why he's dangerous. He's not confused about the truth. He's weaponizing the language of the truth seeking to then justify authoritarian control. The Banner example is a tell. He's not saying report more accurately. He's saying report the story the way that we want it told. Iran is desperate, maybe true, but that's a frame, not a fact. And frames matter because they shape how people understand what's happening. Post it. People need to see this clearly. When leadership dictates headlines, it is primarily called state media control, propaganda, or media censorship. This practice, which involves directing, coercing, managing news content, is a hallmark of dictatorship, authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and a regime designed to maintain power by eliminating dissent and controlling information. F that BS. So where we are is basically our government is saying any criticism or coverage of objective news in regards to the Iran war that we don't like is unpatriotic. And thereby, Trump endorses the fact of using his henchman, FCC chairman Brendan Carr, one of the authors of Project 2025, to then threaten and dangle the broadcasting licenses of news organizations that report this information, trying to use that as leverage to then be like, you should operate within the public's best interest, which they should. But they're using that public's best interest line to then only align with, oh, well, you're not operating right now in the public's best interest because you're criticizing Trump. You're criticizing Trump, which thereby isn't in the public's best interest. So you should report patriotic coverage that doesn't criticize Trump. Then you would be in the public's best interest. You see how they're framing that? They're basically trying to wrap authoritarianism in a patriotic red, white, and blue banner. They're trying to justify it as somehow being American to be authoritarian. We, the American people, deserve way better. As soon as the government is basically saying, you should frame it this way instead of this way. Excuse me, but you don't have the right to make that distinction. You don't have the right, the privilege to abridge people's freedom of speech. You don't. And also, Brendan Carr oversees the broadcasting licenses. So he's trying to use this as a way to bully media corporations into covering stories in a more favorable light. That's fascism and authoritarianism wrapped in red, white, and blue. I'm over it. And it deserves to be exposed. So if you appreciate this breakdown, please make sure to subscribe. I need to get going because I need to get to work. I appreciate every single one of you. I know that today's live stream might have been a little bit dry, a little bit like, okay, I'm a little bit confused here. I hope that I was clear in regards to all of this. I know sometimes it's not always easy to follow my live streams, but I hope that someone took something away from this. Right now, I'm trying to figure out ways to push my content even further to be informative. I hope that I make things easy to understand. I know I might repeat myself a lot, but I do that as a teaching mechanism or a tool to then help explain it. Sometimes people will learn it if it's phrased this way, or understand it if it's phrased this way. Which, me repeating myself this much makes it really difficult when I'm trying to produce content. But I need your reassurance, or maybe not assurance. Did you all understand what I was talking about today? I think you do well to take an actual objective look at US media history. You might be surprised just how much influence the government has had. Well, of course the government has had influence. I am hearing a Trump speech bleeding into Scott's head. Huh? I'm hearing a Trump speech bleeding into Scott's head. What a weave? Are you telling me that I'm doing a weave, C-Bar? Okay, cool. I'm seeing some people, strange. What do you mean strange? A Trump speech. Scott's feed? What do you mean? I am confused! I'm hearing a Trump speech bleeding into Scott's feed. What is that? What do you mean? I'm so confused. Please clarify before I end the live stream. I'm glad that some people were able to understand it. If you're still a little bit confused about it, I do encourage that you look into it. Just look at what Brendan Carr is saying. Our current FCC chairman is claiming that any criticism towards the Trump administration for their actions in Iran is somehow unpatriotic. I'm hearing another sound bleeding into Scott's channel. What? Another sound? What does that mean? Another sound? What does that mean? Is there another person that's like going live at the same time? I'm hearing Scott and Trump at Young. C-Bar, I don't understand, but I appreciate and love you. I don't get it. But I need to go. I need to get ready for work. I appreciate every single one of you. If you enjoyed today's live stream, please make sure to smash that subscribe button. Please make sure to send some likes. I've been working on posting a lot of content. I'm hearing Scott and Trump on my AirPods right now. Oh, goodness gracious. I hear a little music. Yeah, I have my music on in the background. I usually do for my live streams. I usually try to put on some sort of soundtrack to something. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Please check out my latest videos and content. I'm trying to post more regularly, and I appreciate every single one of you. I really do. It's nice. Oh, thank you. I think having a little music is uplifting in the morning. So, I love all of you so much. Go check out my latest content. Y'all are incredible. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything or any algorithm ever dim your shine. And make sure to subscribe. I love you all so much. Bye!